Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Tonight on Houselights, we continue our Wing of Batman with the Christopher Nolan trilogy, in which a man best known for making people question the nature of time and memory looked at Batman and decided the real fix was less gothic Gotham and more tax fraud-riddled Chicago. Christian Bale growls his way through an origin story. Heath Ledger redefines an already iconic role, and then it closes out with prison-grade spinal surgery. Somehow, it works. Somehow, it works so well that every studio in Hollywood spent the next decade trying to make their own version of gritty. With me, who has already whispered, disappeared, and is technically still in the room, Darren Moser. And bringing full anarchy energy, the proof that insanity is just one bad day away, John Mills. This wing means Bruce Wayne can afford a hotel, but not a second row of seats. Heath Ledger rewrote what a comic book villain could be and then never got to see it happen. And Bane's mask muffled dialogue so badly, they had to remix it after test audiences complained. Let's train in a mountain fortress, blow up a football stadium, and ask whether a flaming bat signal on a bridge was time well spent. This is Houselights.
Yes, I give the podcast back to you, the people.
You think because you hit record, this gives you power over my vote and rating?
I think about that moment a lot when he just puts his hand on his shoulder. He doesn't even clasp it.
No.
He doesn't he just rests it to the side. That was such a genius move.
It was.
I can't really articulate why it's so good. Okay, so obviously we're doing Wing of Batman. And we're all big Batman fans. And we've reached the Dark Knight trilogy, which is probably the highest of profile of Batman films to be made to this point and since. And Batman Begins 2005. I was a youngster. I was a wee lad who just graduated high school. And I remember downloading this trailer online, and it took for freaking ever. And then once I downloaded it, I had to install QuickTime. That was a kick in the pants.
Those were great days to be alive, weren't they? They were just the best. The best.
What was it, like apple.com/trailers?
Yes.
Or something?
Yes, it was apple.com/trailers.
Yep.
Yes.
That's where you got the best quality, the best visual quality. You could either get it in 480, 720, or God forbid, 1080 if you had the time.
1080 just took too long. Let's be honest with ourselves here, yes. My good
grief. I remember, I think the opening shot was Bruce in his rags walking through the mountains. Just immediately, I was like, well, this is different. Like, this is different.
I remember being very intrigued by the trailer, having been old enough to have been duly traumatized by Batman and Robin when they announced it. Because the thing is, it's not like there were no comic book movies between Batman and Robin and Batman Begins. Like, you know, we'd had Spider-Man show up on the scene, have, a couple of good goes on screen. We'd seen,
I think Fantastic Four, right?
Yeah, we had, Fantastic Four was in there. Yeah, you're right. You always forget about that one.
I think some Blade?
Yeah, Blade was in there as well. And so coming
X-Men.
into this, but yes.
Oh, yeah, the big ones.
X-Men.
I'd say X-Men really opened the door to
and
legitimacy.
X2, I think, had happened by then as well.
X2 was definitely that was the door kicking in moment. But my point is, like, there wasn't a reason to get necessarily excited about a Christopher Nolan Batman movie. It was, okay, that's a different choice. Because remember, by this point in his career, it was like, oh yeah, I mean, he did Memento, he did Insomnia. Okay, Batman. All right, they're giving the guy a go. Sure, they're giving him a try. Like, we didn't have enough. If these movies had never happened, and then he's done like Inception and Interstellar, and then like he's doing the next Batman movie, that's a whole different level of hype for fans. Completely different. And I think that I went into it just with healthy skepticism that it could be pulled off. We were all sure that the franchise was dead and gone.
Clooney had told us so. It must be so.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly right.
I went in whole hog. Like there was no skepticism. There was no guarding of my heart. I was like, no, this is it. This is going to be the one. This is like this is the one that's going to blow people's minds. And because at that time I was a gigantic Memento fan. And even though I didn't really dig on Insomnia too terribly much, I thought it was well directed. And just the idea of the director who was able to pull off Memento and then go to Batman, I was all for it. I was like, this is what we need. We need this kind of auteur to take it on, like this kind of person who can wrap psychological issues and put it together and like really have a mise en scene, just like all these things. It's just like I was so stoked for it, but I was a little worried about the action. I was like, okay, I don't know how this is going to happen. I don't know how he's going to do action. Hopefully he gets a lot of help, but apparently he refused a second unit director that was just for the action scenes. He said he wanted to do it himself. I want to jump a little bit and go to Batman Begins action scenes. Like obviously Christopher Nolan is a great director. But what did you think about the action in Batman Begins compared to Dark Knight Rises? Is it amateurish? Is it sophomorish? Do you see the seeds of something better later on? How do you see that evolution of action from Nolan?
I mean, I think Batman Begins, definitely you see somebody handling that type of action scene for the first time. I think that there are definitely, like even today, I can watch those things and I'm like, oh, I bet he wishes he had that back. Because I can't really tell who's hitting who, like where's the camera? He's moving it too much while they're spinning in a circle. He's trying to be a little too stylized with it. So he's still trying to get his hands around it. I don't think a second unit director would have helped him because I think it would not have felt like Christopher Nolan behind the camera. He has a very, very specific way. I think that when you look at Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, you see a guy who figured out, oh, this is how I make this work for the way I do things, instead of trying to change the way he does things to match the action, to match an expectation of action, I would say.
Yeah, no, I think it works though, because I think defining it as kind of a sophomore try, like getting into it, fits in a strange way because it is also the Batman origin. So in a way, like, because Bruce is getting better at fighting and just becoming this creature, like I kind of like the messiness and the tier that we don't go past in as far as action goes. I mean, you compare it to Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, which are ratcheted up. Like I almost, it's a weird kind of hindsight, but if you had like the semi-truck flip scene in Batman Begins, it would have almost felt like too much. Like, why is this giant set piece in the middle of this movie? This is not that movie. This is the intro, but we're smart enough to not have, I'm looking at you, Robin Hood, the last shot, him being Batman. Obviously, he is Batman through a lot of this, but so all that to say, I love the all men in black, fight in the beginning where he's with Ra's al Ghul and he's moving. I mean, that's a very simple single location fight that we'd never really seen something like that, but it fit really well with where Bruce was on his journey.
Well, I like you look at a smaller moment like that where Ra's is fighting him when he first gets in there. And I think that's where Nolan has the best handle on it because he has built-in breaks for dialogue. So you can sort of like reset and get used to the rhythm of everything. But I still think that in the larger fight scenes, for instance, in the container in the shipyard, when he's going around through the containers and everything, there is a little bit of visual confusion that happens. So it's like those are really the scenes I'm looking at. I think that it's just inconsistent because that scene where he's fighting Ra's or when the dojo is burning and stuff like that, those work really well. The shipyard is a little soupy. Even though I love the scene where he's fighting in the prison courtyard, it's still a little first-timery. But Nolan's first time doing something is better than most people's 10th time doing something. So you don't really notice it, sort of thing. But then you contrast that with the way he approaches the action in The Dark Knight. And honestly, I would say pound for pound, the fist fight scenes of the trilogy in The Dark Knight outdo the other two. because there's a very clear like linear dominance to Batman's movements through crowds when it comes to, you know, him taking on more than one person. But although obviously like the one-to-one stuff when he's fighting Bane is just ridiculous. Like that is so, because Nolan really leans into not making Bane fast. Bane is just, you know, he's the Hulk basically. And it's like, so Nolan is able to approach that one a lot more, strategically, as it were.
Let's jump ahead, and because I kind of mentioned this at the beginning, let's talk about Gotham. So one thing that we've really talked about in The Wing of Batman is the presence of Gotham and how directors portray the city and how they want the viewers to really witness it and feel it. Batman Begins Gotham is very different than Dark Knight Gotham. And Dark Knight Rises Gotham is very different from Dark Knight Gotham. There's a wild inconsistency that I really didn't dig on, that I wish, like a real small infinitesimal part of me wishes that he would go a little Lucas and just and make them consistent in re-releases. But I'm just joking, folks. So like in Batman Begins, you have a little bit more of a gothic feel because you have the Narrows, you have a little bit more CGI built into the city and to kind of like obscure the skyline of Chicago. In The Dark Knight, it's Chicago if Chicago was an island. Like that's pretty much what like if Chicago was an island, that's what it is. Like I was just there this morning. You know, like I work in Chicago, and there's so many times like I take Lower Wacker every single day, and I admit I geek out a little bit because that's where the Tumblr chase was. But then when you get to The Dark Knight Rises, it's frickin' Pittsburgh, and
which is a town that has no character. Chicago has beautiful architecture. So even when I can recognize that it's Chicago, the buildings are gorgeous. I'm sorry, people from Pittsburgh. Your city kind of sucks. And I think that the thing that bothers me, if we're talking about city inconsistency, is when they said it was, oh, well, it's going to be in Pittsburgh. Like my reaction to the news when that broke was, why? Why? No. Like I was shaken by it because I didn't want that. And
I know.
Maybe that's not fair, but like what it made me start thinking about, because we've had so long to have this sit in our brains, is if there's one thing where I would fault, if you're judging it as an arc of an entire series, I think that if you're going to wrap everything up, not to bring the Narrows back at some point. The Narrows is where, you know, it's the slums of Gotham. It's where all of the big action at the end originates. It's got all of this stuff. That's where Arkham is. And then they just never pay attention to it again.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's wrong. It's not good. Like, especially because when Bane breaks people out of Blackgate Prison, I think there's more storytelling symmetry to say, oh, well, what we did was we took over Arkham and we expanded it and we made that a prison. Instead of having the prison be in the literal center of the city, which is insane city plan. Like the city planning in The Dark Knight Rises is like, Christopher Nolan, are you familiar why they don't put prisons in the center of the city? I'm just asking. Like it's that. I know. It's, oh, well, they made Blackgate because I know the story points, but it's just nobody would be insane enough to do that. Like that is literally insane to do that. So like that's the one thing is the city stuff does rankle me to this day.
It really does. Apparently, Emma Thomas, Christopher Nolan's wife and producing partner, huge creative force behind the Dark Knight trilogy. She said in an interview, she's like, "Well, we filmed literally every inch of Chicago in The Dark Knight," and which is complete
nonsense,
absolute nonsense. And she said, but we wanted Gotham to feel expansive. Like you could never get enough of it. Like it always was growing and going beyond. And so we went to Pittsburgh. And I was like, first of all, both are lies. Man of Steel wanted to film in Chicago. And so you gave them priority to film in Chicago. And Pittsburgh gave you better tax credits.
Yes.
That's the reason why. And it really shows. And I think it's a huge knock to the visual language and consistency.
I agree.
Of the trilogy. And now, does that ruin the movie? Of course it doesn't. But because Gotham how it's portrayed is such a big part of this discussion. We had to touch on it. Now, Darren, do you remember how big Batman Begins was? That like the presence, the word of mouth. Do you remember that at all? Or do you really only remember the surge that was The Dark Knight?
Yeah, it's hard to break them apart in my mind because I do remember there, like you said, the trailer download and getting into Batman Begins, but the Dark Knight marketing was on such another level, and just like this was definitely not the first, but one of the better just marketing campaigns. Like you don't actually think about marketing campaigns, but the way they control, I'm using all these buzzwords, controlled the narrative of, releasing the images of the Joker and educating people about who Harvey Dent is really, like in this world. Who is he? Why should we care? Because he's going to be a major player. And, they, did a lot of fan interaction and, marked up dollar bills. But back to Batman Begins, I just remember it really was that trailer. It was trailer time. That was not that there wasn't other marketing and posters and things like that, but you lived and died on the trailer, especially now that it was downloadable. Because, kids, that was newly a thing that you could actually, handle downloading that onto your computer or your iPod video or whatever it was. So you could watch it over and over and nitpick and delve into every frame versus, oh, I got to go to the movies again to see that. We all think of, how many times did we book a ticket to something else to watch the episode 1 trailer or something like that?
The reception of Batman Begins, I remember, was more like it was definitely a reintroduction party sort of thing. Everybody was skeptical. The movie was pretty well received, and I think I've said this before, but when I came out of it, I wasn't sure. Like, it was weird because I remember the feeling of like, I think I loved it, like, but I wasn't ready to. I was like, is this? It's almost like a dreamlike state where you're like, I think I need to see that again to confirm how I felt, because it was so different and it was so much better than expected. But that's not enough to get, the general public in, as it were, to the $1 billion box office level. Like, but it was a great breakthrough movie because comic book fans were finally able to see something and say, oh, no, it's just a good movie on its own terms. You don't need to be a Batman fan or a comic book fan to like this. This treats Batman as if the story is just naturally a real person story and not about a guy in a bat suit. Like, it talks about bigger things than he's mad that his parents got killed. Like, that, I think, is the truly most effective thing that Batman Begins does, is it elevates the character well beyond his personal tragedy because of Ra's al Ghul, telling him you can be something more, and telling him, very difficult truths. Yeah, Ra's is he's the ultimate bad guy at the end and betrayer, but he still says things that spur the character forward. And we see Bruce come to terms with the fact that, life is bigger than his own pain. It's about bigger things going on. He's going to serve a bigger purpose than just grinding his own grudge out against the world.
Yeah, the use of Ra's al Ghul as like this narrative pivot point to push. I mean, because Ra's al Ghul is really way more connected with Bruce Wayne than Batman. Like, he is not a Batman foil. He is the foil against Bruce Wayne and Bruce Wayne's way of saving his city. It's interesting, though, to look at Batman Begins comparatively to Mask of the Phantasm, which we covered already, which is also kind of in that it's intercutting, but that first year of Batman getting the cape, becoming the symbol, wanting people to be afraid of me. But this did it in such a real way. I love the parts of like, well, this is how we're going to order the electronics for your cape. We're going to get this units and we're going to put it, because it's like, yeah, it's someone with a brain sat down with the script soup and was like, how would you actually do this if money was no option, but you still have to do it in secret? How would you become Batman? And this movie basically does that.
It's still nonsense, but it's believable nonsense. They give you enough of an explanation that you're like, well, yeah, I mean, if he jumped off and the wind was just right and his cape caught, sure, he could land softly, sure.
Yeah, you have to have some suspension of disbelief, and they give you just enough most of the time. But then there's a few times, more than a few times throughout the trilogy where instead of bending it, it's broken. Like when he catches Rachel on the way down and slams onto the taxi.
Yeah, that one's a tough one.
Yeah, that's a real tough one. And then you fire your grappling gun. Yeah. And then you fire your grappling. You're right. I remember seeing it for the first time. I was like, I kept waiting for the grappling gun. You literally fell off a skyscraper, Bruce. Like, I'm sorry. You're both dead. The body trauma of slamming into that. Like, no.
We have yet to talk about Christian Bale as Bats. So when it was announced that Christian Bale was going to be Batman, did either of you have any kind of hesitation? I knew about Christian Bale a lot before this. I knew he was a kid actor, and I think the biggest touchstone for me was Newsies, the Disney musical. No joke.
Same for me.
Yeah. And I was like, hey, yeah, cool. Let's do it. I didn't really have any hesitation.
This is going to sound terrible. I didn't care. Like, I'd been through Clooney and Kilmer and Keaton. I was like, sure, bring somebody. I'm like, at least there's no baggage with this guy. Like,
no, man, you weren't there. Okay, I was there when Clooney was cast.
Keaton got ripped apart because, quote unquote, Batman was going to have hair plugs. And then there was, when Kilmer got cast, it was like, oh, okay, but he doesn't look right. Like, there's a whole ton of stuff. There was always baggage with the other ones. And with this one, it was like, I was glad that I didn't know too much about Christian Bale by this point. Like, to the point where somebody was like, oh, he was in, name a movie. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I mean, he'd been in American Psycho by this point. So it was kind of like, oh, this movie could be a little
everyone
crazier.
Thought that like Bruce Wayne was going to be American Psycho.
Well, that's just silly.
Well, but see, the two that stood out for me in his filmography at that point was actually like Little Women, because he plays Laurie in that, and also you have him in what was it? Not Pocahontas. It was
The New World.
Reign of Fire. He's also in Reign of Fire, which is a decent, not the best film, but a decent dragon movie. So
I like it.
I think I'm with you guys. I was very much I just like Batman. Let's see where this goes. Like, I think enough time had passed where we were all kind of ready to give it another shake and see what happened. But
the real star player, let's be honest, because this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship between a director and an actor. This is the beginning of Michael Caine being in everything until he retired. And I can tell you that was like a comfort. Whereas like, and Michael Caine to play Alfred. And it was like, oh, well, Alfred will be pretty solid at the very least. Like I was like, yeah, I can see Michael Caine as that. Sure, absolutely. And I think that his through line is terrific. And if I have, again, one thing I'll ping The Dark Knight Rises for, it's not enough Alfred.
Taking him out of the third act.
Taking him out was like, it made sense, but there's almost a part of me that would love to ask, could we see him talk? Could we have seen him talking with Lucius and like sort of like Lucius saying, we're still friends, Alfred, like he'll come around, give him time, that sort of thing. Because Alfred just disappears. He literally just disappears. And we've spent enough time with this character, especially in the context of Bruce Wayne by this point. It's like, was Alfred still in the city? Did he leave before the bridges were blown? If he didn't, how did Alfred, was he hiding rubies from Bane? I don't know. Maybe he was. But like, especially because he's super key in The Dark Knight. He is so key. He has some of the best lines in The Dark Knight. Like when he's giving Bruce the pep talk, he's like, take it, endure, like where he's telling him is like, you're going to get through. You got to make the choice that nobody wants to make. You gotta just power through. Like there's this beautiful sort of symmetry between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, where you see Ra's al Ghul as this overly macho type of influence on Bruce. Like, oh, the world is bad and you have to beat it into submission and you have to be stronger than everybody and you have to blah, blah. But then in The Dark Knight, you see how Alfred shaped Bruce and reined him in by being the one that was like, you got to take it. You gotta endure. People need you to do this. You gotta stand in there. I faced a guy like this too. Some people are just crazy, and he's just giving him insight into things and testing him about Rachel too. It's like, oh, you're spying on Rachel now. Like this sort of thing. Like Alfred is very much a voice of reason and compassion in The Dark Knight, and I think that's why it is shocking and it pays off in a sense, because to have Bruce and Alfred have a split in The Dark Knight Rises, it really affected me. I was like, wow. And it's not a shouting match. It's the way that people really end their relationship, which is very calmly, where it's like, we're done. It's not a big shouting match. It's not throwing things. They both play it. Christian Bale and Michael Caine play it so perfectly because it's so sad. They both know they can't even fight that this is the end. Alfred knows this is it. And I think that I still struggle with that in The Dark Knight Rises, because it feels like Alfred was taken out in such a way because they didn't know what to do with him and they didn't want to kill him. Like, I don't know, am I off base? But it really feels like they just were struggling to get him out of the script.
I don't know if it was a situation of they don't know what to do with him. I think it was Nolan's obsession with stripping Batman away, stripping Bruce Wayne. Like he took his wealth, he took his friends, he took his job, he took his health, and he had to take away his mentor and his father figure. He would not have been able to hit rock bottom without the absence of Alfred. And
fair.
I think that is where it comes from. I'm with you. I would have loved to have seen him do something with Lucius or something behind the scenes, something to that effect, just to get more Michael Caine on the screen. But from a character standpoint, from a thematic standpoint, I think it's definitely what Nolan was trying to achieve.
Yes, totally fair. Totally fair.
Now looking at the trilogy as a whole, in the realm of Christian Bale, and with him amongst everybody else. Actually, let's not look to the future. From 2012 to before, where does he lay? Like obviously he's better than Clooney. But if we're ranking Batmans, or we don't even have to rank Batmans like, oh, he's the best or he's the worst. Pretty much just like, where does he fit in your brain? Are we all Keaton men? Are we Bale men? Do we try to juggle the both? Darren, where are we at?
It's hard to say because we've made comparisons with, the Bond franchise and, it's just a different actor playing Batman but each actor got a very different taste and screen time and focus on this character. I say it's more like each has their strongest points. And for me, the strongest point in Christian Bale's performance is he, up to 2012, gets the most Bruce Wayne characterization. Like we get a lot of time with Bruce. Who is Bruce? How does he become, and psychologically and emotionally and, socially become Batman? And then how does he balance that? I look back, I love Michael Keaton. I love his performance, but we don't get a tenth of the narrative story of that. And that's just not the movie. And that's okay. That's not the reason we love Keaton. But Christian Bale, because of the origin of Batman Begins, because of the navigating of real politics and crime lords and all of that of The Dark Knight.
The Rachel stuff too.
The domestic terrorism of The Dark Knight Rises, like all of that. Like we actually see this man, be navigating in a very real world-ish setting. 05 through 12 were really interesting years in the real world. So I look at it as what is the where did they really shine? And Christian Bale, I think, shined the brightest in his portrayal of Bruce Wayne because he was given that. Not to say another actor couldn't have, but the story we're given in the Dark Knight trilogy, I think shines because it doesn't shy away from, well, this is a Batman movie. We just want to see him in the cape, and he's going to be in the cape all the time and talk in the voice that he can't understand. Rachel, where's Rachel? No. We're going to get some.
Swear to me.
I love the Bruce Wayne, but when he buys hotels, when he does crazy Bruce Wayne stuff, it's so fun. Yeah.
This is the only time in the history of Batman since before and since that we've gotten a beginning, middle, and end of his story.
Yeah, I think Darren, you're absolutely right. Bale's given more to work with. Bale, though, is this is going to sound terrible. Keaton, Kilmer, and Clooney, I mean, they could have cast other people at those times for that. Other people could have done what they did. Keaton's great. We all know I love Michael Keaton as Batman, but they could have had somebody else in that circumstance, and it would have worked fine. Let's be honest with ourselves. It would have worked fine. Kilmer, it would have worked fine with somebody else. Clooney, that wouldn't work for anybody. But Bale, I think, has the actual, he has very much the capability to inhabit the character enough to justify how robust they made him throughout these three films. I think that what I find very interesting, the question I would have is we've seen Bruce Wayne in love with Vicky Vale, Selena Kyle, Chase Meridian, Elle Macpherson, whatever the hell her name was in Batman and Robin, and two different actresses playing Rachel. Who did Bale have more chemistry with, do you think? Do you think he had more chemistry with Rachel number 1 or Rachel number 2?
Alfred.
Stop. No, but
the number 1 and 2 makes me think they're fish, and one died, and we just changed him out, so you didn't know.
I honestly, I mean, I think that was probably pretty lacking. I think the idea of Rachel was better than the execution.
And not shown.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the idea of Rachel
Maggie Gyllenhaal as Rachel. I've been on record saying this before. I really, really like Maggie Gyllenhaal.
If I had to pick,
Rachel.
I'd say Maggie. For me,
I don't care. So when we I want to talk a little bit more about The Dark Knight, because with Batman Begins, it made money. It doubled its budget. Everybody's just like, hey, cool. Hey, that was better than expected. Okay, this is going to be, hey, maybe this could go somewhere. And then they're clearly thinking about a sequel with that ending note with, Gordon handing Batman the Joker card, even though Nolan denies that he had the idea of a trilogy or a sequel, which is such BS. Such BS.
Liar.
No one believes that, Nolan. We can all smell the marijuana underneath the door in the dorm room. No one believes that it's sage. Okay. So I thought that was a brilliant setup because it got people excited. It's like you ended a great movie, but then you didn't end on a cliffhanger. You teased the next one. I think that's the thing that people really need to learn from. You don't end on a cliffhanger, you tease the next one. And that's what happened with The Dark Knight. And so even though Batman Begins wasn't this runaway hit, and Darren, you talked about this earlier, the marketing, the beautiful, perfect marketing of The Dark Knight got people so freaking jazzed.
Yes.
Like it got people who thought Batman Begins was just okay, just the marketing alone of Dark Knight got people thinking and lying, saying, "Oh, I knew Batman Begins was perfect and it was going to bring something forward." And there was posters, there was websites, there was this was like the type of website.
There was a phone number you could call.
Guerrilla marketing when it was brand new for this era. And how it utilized the internet, and there was places in Chicago you could go and find little tokens to put things together. Like they had little treasure hunts and things like that. And in the teaser trailer, which was just the Batman symbol with Christian Bale speaking, Michael Caine speaking, and then Heath Ledger as Joker speaking, and then it ends on the Joker laugh, and you hear that Hans Zimmer underneath. You're just like, okay, in the marketing. Like, we're done. Yeah. Like, everyone's going to go see this. I remember, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I remember when people were freaking out that Heath Ledger was cast as Joker. They're just like, what a horrible casting decision. I'm going on record, and I know everyone says this, but I was the first one to say, nope, he can do it. This is amazing. I know what he can do. I've seen every movie of his. He's a fantastic actor. He's going to do an amazing job as the Joker. We went through this with Keaton. Come on. And I remember losing Ledger, and like I had the Joker standing in the middle of the street as my wallpaper on my computer when I heard the news. I got into a fight with my then girlfriend, now wife, because I was so emotionally wrought from the news.
You want to know something terrible? My brother, I remember I was at work and I was leaving work and my brother called on my flip phone and I'm like, hey brother, what's up? And he's like, oh, did you hear? Heath Ledger died. You know what my first reaction was? Because of the marketing being so good, I thought it was a marketing thing. I thought it was a lie to get people to talk about the movie. Like I feel heartless saying that now, but that's
You're
one
not
of those
heartless,
things.
you're just jaded.
Yeah, I guess. But like my first reaction was, no, that can't be true. All the way back then, I was like, what, did you read it on the internet? Please. Like I was already at that point where I was like, whatever, man. And then he's like, no, I swear to God, it's on the news right now. I was like, what? And then I remember doing like searching and I was like, what happened? Like, because I too was really excited about his Joker. Like I was like, oh, this is going to be good, guys. Like I remember seeing a shot of him in the makeup and I was like, oh, this is different. This is really different. And getting excited for it then. And it's so disorienting to think. I mean, people are more than their career. They're their family. He had, kids, right? And like just thinking of it in those terms. But it was so difficult, especially after the movie came out, not to be like, man, he would have been blank check actor. Like no matter what he did for the rest of time, like he would have had like an Alan Rickman sort of aura about him. For those of us who saw Die Hard in the theater, it was like Alan Rickman, and it was like, okay, fine, I'll go see it. I love that guy. Or Sam Jackson, right? It's like, oh, Samuel L. Jackson said, okay, I'm at least considering seeing this movie. And he again, a human being is more than their career. God forgive me if anybody's taking it as me saying, that's the sum of their life or whatever. But Ledger like completely redefined what you could do with a villain. Like there was a definition of a comic book villain when you came into The Dark Knight that he completely shattered. Like you compare his Joker with Nicholson's Joker. Nicholson's Joker is much closer to the Cesar Romero Joker. Ledger's Joker is much more. I remember getting actually into arguments with people because they were saying things like, oh, it's dangerous for kids to see this movie because they're going to want to be the Joker. And I'm like, I don't know who's going to watch this movie and be like, that's the guy this movie is telling me to aspire to be. I'm like, did you watch the movie? Like, yeah.
Well, I think that's the thing is that, I mean, and, of course, we all remember the shooting that happened.
Yeah.
Because of that. And the thing is that we've gone through this, every 5 years, we go through this news cycle of if a crazy person hears voices and tells them to do something crazy, they were crazy to begin with. It's not like they would have found an outlet, whether a movie told them or a comic book told them, a video game told them, or the voices in their head told them.
Or the Beatles told Charles Manson.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's going to happen no matter what. People who are this off kilter are going to find an excuse to be violent, and I don't want to talk about it, but it's one of those things where I'm so glad that there was, when he won the Oscar, there was some back and forth where they're like, should we give something posthumously? Awards are for the living. Should he even be nominated? And do you guys believe that it was the right move to posthumously award him the Oscar?
Yeah, I think it's silly. Not like that. That's nonsense. He gets struck by lightning. His plane goes down or something like that. You're not going to recognize his work. That's ridiculous. Like the best.
I agree.
That would be like not eulogizing somebody. No, of course you talk about how great they were, and how much you loved them. And it's like, I didn't know there was a debate about that really. And
there was, yeah.
I think that's complete. Like I'd have been the guy in the room that'd been like, why are we even talking about this? This is dumb. Like it doesn't even make sense. What if you nominate him and then he dies? Do you rescind the nomination and give it to somebody else? Like what type of precedent?
Where's the cutoff? If you don't die before this date, close to the Oscars.
What if somebody dies the day before the Oscars and they've already won, do we posthumously take it away from them and rehold the vote
if he
with a fifth
dies
person?
between taping and airing, like, yeah, no, it's so.
It's not. That's such a nonsense discussion.
I think you guys are spot on about that, because I feel like it really helped legitimize comic book movies and genre movies in a way at the Oscars that they haven't really done before or kind of since. And it's a shame. Like everybody who's listening to this podcast understands that, like, the legitimacy of genre films at the Oscars is never really going to be mainstream.
No.
And Heath Ledger's performance was so transcendent that it won because of it. And where X-Men opened the door, The Dark Knight legitimized it. And what was it? Okay, so so Batman Begins had a budget of 150, took home 375. Dark Knight had a budget of 185, took home over $1 billion. That was when it was a big deal.
Yes.
Like that was
a super big deal, kids.
Insanity back then, kids. It was crazy town.
But let's not undersell that it was also, it really made use of IMAX. So there was that, aspect ratio thing. And I tell the story all the time. The first viewing I ever had was on a Thursday preview on an afternoon where I snuck out of work and I watched it at an IMAX theater at the Udvar Hazy Air and Space Museum at Dulles Airport in Northern Virginia. And I'll never forget that first shot, that helicopter shot pushing in on the building that they're going to swing out of. And it was the 6-story tall IMAX. And that first shot, boom, with that little musical hit right there.
Straight cut.
Boom, comes in and the entire theater gasped. Just went, like it was audible. Like everybody took in their breath. And I remember like that was so insane. And that was such a selling point to be like, I got to be one of those hipsters to be like, well, did you go to the Science Center to go see it? Because I did.
As Nolan intended.
Exactly right. Exactly
okay,
right.
So we're moving along in time, and I feel like we haven't really talked about Dark Knight Rises that much. And I do want to say that when I first saw Dark Knight Rises, it was a midnight showing it for a bachelor party. I was the best man. I threw the bachelor party, and I was like, we're gonna end the night with the Dark Knight Rises. And I was so stoked, obviously, because I freaking love The Dark Knight. I walked out disappointed. And I was just like, oh man. And I went to lunch with my wife and her family the next day, or I guess I should say later that morning. And she's like, how was it? And I was like, She's like, oh no. And so I kind of compared it to the Godfather trilogy, where
oh no.
No, yeah, let me finish. Where, like Godfather 1, fantastic movie. Fan-frickin-tastic movie is the same as Batman Begins. Godfather 2, good Lord, how is that better than the original? This is insane. And then you have part 3 where I was just like, what a downgrade from the second one. But it's been, 10, okay, so 14 years?
It's been 14 years as of this recording.
Been 14 years. The more I watch it, the more I like it. I had to watch it multiple times in order to truly appreciate it. I think the third one is the most flawed from a story standpoint. I think the organization, the flow, the rhythm is all off, but there are so many great scenes in it that it makes me forgive it. And I love spending time in this world, even though it's Pittsburgh. And it's one of those things where even though you have the ridiculousness of the machine in the first one that turns all water, like dehydrates, like the water supply.
The microwave emitter.
Which I will point out we have as an actual weapon now, but whatever.
Yeah, but we're all made of water. And
yes, I know.
Good thing Batman had that dehydrator machine on his belt.
Like nice there's ridiculousness in each one of these. They're Batman films. It's a guy flying around in a cape. Like you can dress it up as much as you want. It's a guy flying around in a cape. But I think The Dark Knight Rises pushes it a little bit too far too often. But now that I've spent time with it, I do appreciate it. And I think there's great things in all three of them. How do you guys see the trilogy as a whole, real quick, as we round third here?
With Dark Knight Rises, that's one where I started out way higher. I fell down. I've come back up. And I think that yes, it is the most flawed. There's no question. But I think that I'm predisposed to loving it because of the fact that I loved it the first time the ending. The first time I watched it, I cried because I thought it was so beautiful what they did. And I loved what Nolan was saying with it. So his message sort of transcended the shortcomings of some of the material. But I think that, and this is where I'll draw fire, okay, is I would compare it to Rogue One, where the first reel of the movie is a gosh diddly darn mess, okay? But I love the ending. And so it makes up for a lot of what you're talking about, the choppiness. Like I could literally sit down. I've never been a professional editor, but I like to think I know enough about, what I would communicate as a producer, as it were. And Tristan, you can attest to this. I could sit down with an editor or a director and I'd be like, look, take this, move it here, take this, move it here. That's going to flow better. And the rest of your movie is going to be better as a result of it. I think that there are certain moments where if he reordered some of the stuff that happens in the beginning, it's a much better start to the film. And I think that it flows a lot better. The time logic makes more sense because there are certain things that happen in that first third where it's like, well, this scene would have made more sense over here, and that scene would have made more sense over there, or intercutting between the two of them would have made more sense, and the time would have made more sense. Like there's almost this idea at the beginning of The Dark Knight Rises that Nolan has been screwing around with time so much with Inception and The Prestige and certain things that he did with The Dark Knight that he's losing linear storytelling a little bit, and then it comes back to him at the end of the film, or from like from the second, third forward. But that's my largest thing. And yeah, I'll jump on the train. Marion Cotillard's death scene. I can't believe that's the best take, but
no,
I guess
there's no way that's the best take. There's no conceivable way an actress as stellar as her that gave the best take. No, that's terrible editing. It's terrible direction. It's terrible producing. They failed her miserably. She is a fantastic actress, and they just ruined that moment.
And there is one edit that gets under my skin, a micro edit, as you would call it, Tristan, where Matthew Modine is firing, and then it cuts to her, and she's like, "Shoot them!" And then all of a sudden, he's dead on the ground. And then I was like, that was always kind of messy. And then you find out there is a shot that was cut of the car hitting him, and I'm like, what? Why would you cut that? That just doesn't even make sense. And you can't even argue cutting for time because there's no way that took longer than like 3 seconds. The hell, man. Because like it literally is him firing, her going, "Shoot them," and you hear the gun go off, and then he's dead on the ground. And it's like, huh? What? So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing. It's just like, there's a lot of fun moments, but we could like, once you pull that thread and they're just like, send every cop into the sewers, every single one. Okay. Oh, good Lord.
Well,
then they survive for 5 months, and a long time.
One other thing I would offer is that the ending would be so amazing if it simply was Alfred looking up toward the audience, smiling and nodding, and then the screen going black, so that the audience could be like, wait a minute, did Alfred see him? Does Alfred believe he saw him? Was it a nod to the audience? Instead of actually showing Bruce Wayne watching Alfred spend all of his money in Italy. And Fernie Branca sucks. It's a terrible drink. Darren, what about you?
Yeah, no, it is. I think in its own way, The Dark Knight became its own worst enemy in the nature of the trilogy, because it peaked so much. The performance, the editing, the story, just Heath Ledger, all of that. I mean, Heath Ledger, we joke about actors who disappear into roles. Like, there's not a frame of that movie that I look and I see Heath Ledger. It is the Joker every moment, even when he's in his person makeup over white makeup, or however they did that. But yeah, I think I just need to watch Dark Knight Rises more to get that same kind of review period to just simmer with it. Honestly, the biggest takeaway I took from The Dark Knight Rises, which has nothing to do with Batman, is I got mad that I got more mad about Star Trek Nemesis, because here is Tom Hardy acting his heart out, like giving an amazing character performance, so he can do it. He knows how to do it if you give him something to do. And contrasting that with, what we were given in Nemesis is just a crying shame. So yeah, even in a mask, even with overdubbing, even with all of that. But I do remember the hype. I do remember, I think I might be misremembering, but I feel like this was one of the first movies to show an entire scene, an entire sequence as a trailer. And didn't they give us like the plane attack scene? Yeah.
He gives the prologue, yeah.
The prologue. And I remember
I think that's where Nolan got his solidified his reputation of how everything needed to be real.
Right. Yeah. Which is not, I've seen articles about that's not actually the case. He just does really well of hiding things with CG. But
yes.
But yeah, I remember that. And we watched that whole sequence and we were like, buckle up. Here we go. Like that was such a great way to draw you back into this world than any trailer would have. Just show part of the movie. Just show this whole sequence, self-contained. Batman's not even in it. It's just all the villain, and it was so cool. Like that was like Mission Impossible level spectacle.
Yeah,
like as just in Batman universe.
All right, John, give me your ratings.
Well, the ratings overall are 5.5, 4.5, and the rating for the entire trilogy is 5. Because I can pop any one of these on, but the best of all three goes back and forth between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. It really is like, what's my mood that day? And so that's where I stand with it. So 5.5, 4.5, and that's what I'm sticking with.
Darren.
Oh, man, I almost didn't have time to type that out. It was so fast. One last thought I want to say is I love the use of Lucius Fox in this trilogy. I feel like that was just such an unused character in any, except for maybe the animated series, but you needed that character to just add to the plausibility of this world. Like someone who actually had the tech, someone who actually had the pieces. So I'm going 4, 5, and 4. I enjoy Batman Begins. I think it starts it off well. I just find myself watching it less often. There's a lot of, setup, which is great. But if I was going to pick one to pop in, it's got to be The Dark Knight. Although back to your point of Nolan not thinking that this was going to be a trilogy from the beginning or some sort of linked saga, the only thing I feel that gives credence to that is that he would have called the first movie like The Dark Knight, and then it would have been like The Dark Knight subtitle, The Dark Knight like everything would have been called The Dark Knight, rather than the first one being called Batman Begins, which is such a strange title in comparison to the other two, in my opinion. So 4, 5, and a 4.
All right. So for me, it's 4.5, 5, 4. These are all great films. This trilogy is fantastic. Like John, like you said, like I can pop in any single one and have a fantastic time. There's ups and downs in all of them. But with The Dark Knight, it was the best Batman film to come out at that time. It was the perfect superhero film, and it has yet to be dethroned. No superhero film, no Batman film has touched it since 2008 or before. Hard facts here, folks.
I agree. Changed everything.
Changed everything. Darren, what are we doing next week?
All right, the Wing of Batman's not done yet. We're moving on to Zack Snyder with Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice and Zack Snyder's Justice League next on Houselights.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.